What's up, everyone? Back with another episode where we dive deep into the firearms world, and as always, keep it real. Today, we're talking about something a little spicy, the top 10 no-go defensive pistol rounds for 2025. Yeah, I know defensive ammo is a hot topic, and if your favorite round ends up on this list, don't take it personally. It's all about what works and what doesn't when it really matters. Here's the thing. Defensive ammo isn't just another box of bullets. When you're choosing a round to defend your life or the lives of your loved ones, you're making one of the most critical decisions as a firearm owner. The stakes are high. The wrong ammo can mean over-penetrating, failing to expand, or even not stopping the threat at all. And trust me, nobody wants to be in that situation. I've tested a lot of ammo over the years, and while there's some great stuff out there, this list is dedicated to the rounds that completely miss the mark, literally and figuratively. Think of it as a buyer beware guide to help you avoid wasting your money, or worse, putting yourself in a bad spot when it matters most. Now, whether you're new to concealed carry, a seasoned pro, or just here for the commentary, this list has a little something for everyone. And hey, if you're rocking one of these rounds, maybe it's time to rethink your choices. But no hard feelings, right? This is all about keeping it real and keeping you safe. All right, enough talk. Let's get into it with number 10. Buckle up, folks, because this one's going to be a ride. We've got the Winchester Silver Tip. Now, doesn't that name sound classy? Like it belongs on a shelf next to fine wine and cigars? Unfortunately, the performance of this round is anything but sophisticated. It's more like someone put a shiny bow on a bad idea and called it a day. Let's break it down. The Silver Tip comes in two common weights, 115 and 147 grain. On paper, it looks decent. 115 grain pushes 1,225 feet per second with 383 foot-pounds of energy, while the 147 grain delivers 1,010 feet per second with 383 foot-pounds of energy, 333 foot-pounds. Sounds okay, right? The problem is, what happens when this bullet hits its target? Spoiler alert, it overpenetrates like it's got a vendetta against everything in its path. In my testing, it zipped right through ballistic gel, kept going through plywood, and ended up buried deep in a dirt berm. Expansion, barely noticeable. To make matters worse, that overpenetration makes it a liability in real-world situations. The last thing you want in a defensive scenario is your bullet exiting the threat and endangering someone else. Sure, the nickel-plated casing looks great, but pretty doesn't cut it when lives are on the line. Bottom line, Winchester Silver Tip is a no-go for me. If you're shopping for defensive ammo, steer clear of this shiny disappointment. Coming in at number 9 is a round that might win an award for marketing hype, but fails miserably in performance. The G2 RIP, also known as Radically Invasive Projectile. Now, the box says it's designed to create maximum damage, but in reality, it's more like a fancy party trick that leaves you underwhelmed. Here's the deal. The G2 RIP fragments on impact, creating a starburst effect that looks cool in gel, but doesn't penetrate deeply enough to stop a threat effectively. The base of the bullet only goes about 8 inches into the gel, while the fragmented pieces scatter in shallow wounds. Sure, it won't overpenetrate, but it also won't hit anything vital. It's like trying to stop a bear with a handful of glitter. Flashy, but pointless. I'll be honest, I fell for the hype when I first tested this round. The packaging with the tombstone and the RIP branding, it looks like something straight out of a video game. But here's the problem. That same branding could come back to haunt you in court. No one wants to explain to a jury why they picked ammo that looks like it was designed to kill zombies. Long story short, leave the G2 RIP on the shelf. It's all show and no go. Sliding in at number 8 is Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense, a round that boasts impressive speed but fails to deliver where it counts. This is one of those rounds that sounds great on paper, but leaves you shaking your head in the field. Let's start with the specs. This is a 50-grain solid copper hollow point with a claimed muzzle velocity of 2,040 feet per second and 462 foot-pounds of energy. When I tested it out of a Glock 19, it clocked an even faster 2,112 feet per second with 495 foot-pounds. That's blistering speed, no doubt about it. But here's the problem. It only penetrates about 8 inches in ballistic gel, and the portion that does the penetrating weighs next to nothing, about 4 grains. Essentially, you're left with a glorified BB bouncing around inside the target. I've got to admit, this round is fascinating to watch in action. It hits gel like a mini explosion, obliterating the surface, but all that energy gets dumped way too soon. It looks great in slow-mo, but in a real-world defensive scenario, you need deeper penetration to reach vital organs. The verdict? Liberty Civil Defense might be fun to test at the range, but it's not a serious option for self-defense. It's another flashy performer that falls short where it matters most. At number 7, we've got the Remington Golden Saber, a round that's supposed to be premium defensive ammo, but falls flat in almost every way. Honestly, this one surprised me. Remington is a big name in the ammo world, so you'd expect better, right? Well, not this time. The Golden Saber I tested was the 124 grain plus P version. It's listed at 1,125 feet per second, which is pretty slow for plus P ammo and generates 348 foot-pounds of energy. But the real problem isn't its speed, it's how it performs on impact. The core and jacket separate almost every time, especially when passing through barriers like plywood. This essentially turns the bullet into a poorly shaped rock that doesn't expand or penetrate effectively. It clogs up, bends, and might as well be a glorified FMJ, full metal jacket, at that point. I've shot hundreds of these rounds in testing, and they consistently failed to deliver reliable results. They either over-penetrate without expanding, or just fail to meet the standards of what defensive ammo should do. For something marketed as a premium option, that's unacceptable. Bottom line, the Remington Golden Saber is a no-go. You'd be better off with their cheaper UMC hollow points, which ironically outperform this round in my tests. Save your money and steer clear of this dud. The Sig Elite Performance with the Sierra V Crown projectile, a round that had a lot of hype when it first hit the market, but couldn't live up to expectations. As someone who respects Sig for their firearms, I really wanted this ammo to perform, but it just didn't. The issue with the V Crown is its inconsistency. While it works okay in bare gel, it struggles with barriers like clothing or plywood. I've tested this round extensively, and more often than not, it either fails to expand or doesn't penetrate deeply enough. In some cases, it even bounced off auto glass, like it had second thoughts about continuing its journey. The specs aren't bad on paper. The 124 grain version I tested clocked 1,165 frames per second, but in real-world scenarios, numbers aren't enough. It's like having a flashy sports car that stalls every time you hit a speed bump. And while it's technically not a plus P round, the pressure levels are so high it's essentially behaving like one, which doesn't do your gun or accuracy any favors. In short, the Sig Elite Performance with Sierra V Crown is a disappointment. It looks great in the box, but when the rubber meets the road or the bullet meets the gel, it falls apart. At number 5, we've got the Winchester Brown XO, another shiny marketing gimmick that fails to deliver on its promises. When I first saw this round, I thought, cool, an X design inside the bullet. Maybe it's for hunting vampires? But jokes aside, this round is hot garbage when it comes to real-world performance. Here's the problem. The XO's unique design, which is supposed to ensure expansion, often does the opposite. In my testing, It failed to expand in bare gel and acted more like a full metal jacket, punching straight through the block. And when I put it up against barriers like clothing or plywood, it performed even worse. No expansion, no energy dump, just straight line over penetration. The 147 grain version I tested was moving at 1,010 feet per second and generating 333 foot-pounds of energy. While that sounds decent for its weight, numbers don't tell the whole story. If the bullet doesn't expand or perform as designed, those stats are meaningless. It's like buying a sports car that can't corner. It's just not doing its job. If you're in the market for defensive ammo, skip the Browning X Point. It's all style and no substance, and you're better off with just about any other modern hollow point. Let's keep it rolling with number 4. Winchester strikes again with the USA Ready Hex Vent Insert, a round that had so much potential but just didn't deliver. Designed to mimic the success of Hornady's Critical Defense series, this ammo boasts a polymer insert meant to prevent clogging and ensure reliable expansion. Sounds great, right? Unfortunately, the reality is a far cry from the promise. The version I tested was a 124 grain plus P round, listed at 1,200 feet per second with 396 foot-pounds of energy. In theory, this should have been a solid performer. But during testing, it repeatedly failed to expand properly, especially through clothing. In some cases, the polymer insert actually seemed to hinder performance by either clogging up entirely or forcing the bullet to expand prematurely, resulting in shallow penetration. Through bare gel, I saw penetration depths of around 8 to 9 inches on the high end, which is far below the FBI minimum standard of 12 inches. Add a barrier, and it's even worse. For a round marketed as ready, it sure doesn't seem ready for real-world defensive scenarios. If you're tempted by this round because of the branding or its polished look, I'd recommend saving your money. There are far better options out there, and this one is more gimmick than game changer. The Winchester Ranger 1 was supposed to be a step up from their already popular Ranger T-Series, but it ends up feeling like a downgrade. On paper, it's another innovative design with an insert meant to aid in expansion. In practice, it struggles to do anything reliably. Testing the 147 grain version, which clocks in at 1,010 feet per second with 333 foot-pounds of energy, revealed some glaring issues. Against bare gel, it barely hit the 12-inch penetration mark, and that was on a good day. Add clothing or any kind of barrier, and the bullet's performance fell apart, literally. The petals shredded on impact, leaving little more than the base to continue forward. Through auto glass, the round fragmented so badly that what was left was essentially useless. Expansion was inconsistent at best, and penetration often fell short of what's needed to stop a threat. In scenarios where you need reliability, this round offers none. It's frustrating because Winchester's T-Series is well regarded, making the underwhelming performance of the Ranger 1 even more disappointing. When it comes to defensive ammo, reliability is key. Unfortunately, the Ranger 1 falls short, making it another round you should steer clear of. The Winchester White Box Hollow Point might be one of the most common budget defensive rounds out there, but common doesn't mean effective. If you've ever been tempted by its low price tag, let me save you the trouble. It's not worth it. This round is essentially the economy version of Winchester's Silver Tip, and it suffers from the same flaws. In testing, the 115 grain variant clocked in at 1,165 frames per second with 347 foot-pounds of energy, but its performance was wildly inconsistent. Expansion was hit or miss, and more often than not, it behaved like a full metal jacket, over-penetrating without delivering the energy dump needed to stop a threat. Against barriers like clothing or plywood, the round's weaknesses became even more apparent. It clogged easily and failed to expand properly, making it both unpredictable and ineffective in a defensive situation. Worse, the inconsistency means you never really know what you're getting. Some rounds might expand, others won't. That's not a gamble you want to take when your life's on the line. Winchester's white box ammo might seem like a good deal, but when it comes to defensive ammunition, cutting corners is a bad idea. Spend the extra money for something reliable. This one's a definite no-go. Rounding out this list is one that might hurt some feelings: the Federal Hydroshock. I get it, it's a classic. For years, it was the go-to defensive round, and many shooters still swear by it. But let's face it, defensive ammunition has evolved, and Hydroshock just hasn't kept up. The big issue with Hydroshock is over-penetration. This round punches through like it's training for the Olympics, leaving a wound channel that's more like a pinprick. In ballistic gel testing, it blew straight through the block, over-penetrating by a wide margin. Now, if you're defending yourself against a grizzly bear, maybe that's fine. But in a home defense or concealed carry scenario, over-penetration is a massive liability. Sure, it expands beautifully in bare gel, but when you add real-world factors like clothing or barriers, things go downhill fast. The expansion becomes inconsistent, and the likelihood of hitting unintended targets increases. It's an outdated design in a world where modern hollow points offer far better performance. Look, I respect what Hydroshock has done for defensive ammo innovation, but it's time to let it retire gracefully. There are just too many superior options out there now. So, while it may have been great in its day, it's not a contender for 2025. From rounds that over-penetrate to those that fail to expand or just plain underperform, this list is a reminder of why choosing the right defensive ammo matters. At the end of the day, your life could depend on it, and cutting corners with unreliable ammunition isn't worth the risk. We've seen flashy designs like the G2 RIP that look great on the shelf but fall apart in real-world scenarios. Then there are the classics like Federal Hydroshock that just haven't kept up with modern demands. And let's not forget the shiny marketing gimmicks like Winchester's Silver Tip and Hex Vent rounds that overpromise and underdeliver. The key takeaway: defensive ammo should give you consistent performance across the board, whether it's penetrating barriers, expanding in gel, or stopping a threat effectively. If it doesn't meet those criteria, it's not worth your time or money. Now I want to hear from you. Did your least favorite round make the list? Or maybe you're running something on here and think I got it wrong? Let me know in the comments. I'm always up for a good debate. And while you're at it, hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, stay safe, shoot straight, and make sure you've got the right ammo in your carry setup. Until next time.